Greetings, everyone, and welcome to episode number 50 of the DJP. I wasn't quite sure I would ever even make it to episode number 50, so that's kind of cool for me. It's an exercise in my resilience and my wherewithal, I guess. I just don't give up, right? Well, this one's kind of a cool episode for me because my guest today is Dave Smith. Dave is an internationally recognized Buddhist meditation teacher, addiction treatment specialist, and published author. He has a lot of extensive experience bringing meditative interventions into jails, prisons, youth detention centers, and addiction treatment facilities. Dave teaches residential meditation retreats and classes, provides trainings and consulting in both secular and Buddhist contexts, and works with students through his meditation mentoring program. He recently founded the Secular Dharma Foundation, and he currently lives in Paonia, Colorado. Dave is one of my personal favorite Dharma teachers, and I listen to his podcast all the time. It's been super influential on me and helpful in my pursuit of the Dharma and knowledge of the Dharma and just my meditation practice in general. So this one's a really cool episode for me to do, and it's a really cool episode for me to share with you. So without further ado, Dave Smith.
You might catch yourself sliding in and out of a hallucinatory state. Just relax and enjoy it. Just relax and enjoy it.
This is an experiment in mind formation. Information. Forming, controlling, operating your mind and your brain. Using digital techniques to overload, scramble, confuse, unfocus your mind. The natural state of the brain is chaos. Chaos is beautiful.
Dave Smith, how are you, man?
I'm good. It's nice and crispy here in Colorado. It's like 50 degrees out, sunny.
Ooh, that's nice.
Good day.
Yeah, sounds like it. Colorado is pretty. What part of Colorado are you in?
We're in Paonia, which is the western slope, 80 miles south of Aspen, kind of where the Rockies end and then the desert begins. Oh. So we live in a kind of a fruit culture. We have a lot of irrigation water. So we have orchards and fruit trees and, small town, 2,000 people maybe. But definitely good for me. We got a 7-acre piece of land and a big house, and I can actually afford to have things out here because it's, it's a much rural situation. So it's very affordable.
No, that's good because everything else is definitely not affordable right now.
I know, it's fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's fucking bananas, dude. Like just the price of food alone has gone up, and like I don't know what you guys are paying for gas over there, but I know we're up to $4 a gallon right now.
Yeah, I'm about $3.40 for diesel. I drive diesel.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, definitely better if you're on a farm. Anyway, diesel's the way to go. At least in my experience.
Yeah.
We're not exactly rural here, but we do have a lot of rural outskirting areas.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still small, kind of a small town. I think there's probably maybe like 500,000 people in the metro area here, which is.
Yeah, you got me beat big time.
Yeah, for sure. I can only imagine, man. I helped a friend of mine move to Colorado in like 2005. And he lived we moved him to Manitou Springs from here and drove like 28 hours straight pulling a U-Haul. But yeah, super small towns. I love it up there. It's beautiful.
It is. It's my favorite sort of, other than like northern New Mexico is probably my favorite part of the country. We're not too far from there, but I like the high desert. I like the dry air. And I like the high fluctuation of temperature. Like we can have a temperature swing 50 degrees in 24 hours. It can be, 10 degrees at 6 a.m. and then 60 degrees at 3 in the afternoon.
Right. Bring a jacket.
Yeah. So, you get too hot. You're always getting like a little bit of a, if it gets to be intolerable, you just have to wait 10 hours and you'll be fine.
Yeah. That's how it is here. You just have to bring an umbrella everywhere. It's like Florida, you never know what the weather's going to do. So they say, it's like, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes.
Yeah, they say that about a lot of places.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably true a lot of places, I would imagine. So let's talk about the Dharma, man. How did you Let's get some background on Dave Smith for the people.
Totally. It's one of those things you're like, oh boy, here we go. It's like I've told the story a million times, but it's always fair. I'm lucky. I would say I'm very lucky. I don't know if I necessarily would use the word karma, but I would say that I had the great fortune of just growing up down the street in Western Massachusetts from Daniel Goleman. So I became friends with his children. And Daniel Goleman's the sort of famous emotional intelligence writer, one of the people responsible for really bringing mindfulness to the culture. And I was also friends with Hahnemann's mom, who was one of these people Hahnemann's Danny's son. Hahnemann was one of my best friends growing up. So his mom knew that I was kind of off a little bit. I had some trauma. I was kind of a high strung, active kid. So she was one of these people. Her name's Anasuya. She sat Goenka retreats in the early 70s and was in India and was with Neem Karoli Baba and was all part of that total crew. Right. So she, when I was like 19, she suggested that I go to Insight Meditation Society and meet with one of her friends who was a Dharma teacher. And I had no idea what that meant. I was like, yeah, if you want me to go, I'll go fucking talk to your friend if you think it's going to help me. Yeah. And his name was Stephen Smith. So I went up there. It was really weird. It was like, we were driving up there. It was in November. I remember it perfectly. It was in November, it was the end of November, around Thanksgiving. The 3-month retreat at IMS was just ending, and Joseph Goldstein was having a Thanksgiving kind of party feast at his house for him and all the other teachers on the retreat. So I walk into Goldstein's house, fucking baked out of my mind on weed. And Joseph's there, Sharon Salzberg's there, Steve Armstrong's there, Carol Wilson's there, everybody who taught the 3-month retreat is there. And then we hung out there for a while, and then I went and spent the night at the now Barry Center for Buddhist Studies, which used to just be a farmhouse that IMS owned. And then in the morning, Stephen Smith came and talked to me. I have no idea. I can't tell you anything about the conversation other than that it had a lasting impression. I'll probably even up until this moment. And then also we went and practiced mindfulness. He said, mindfulness practice, insight. They usually, back then in the 90s, they didn't use the word mindfulness very much. It was mostly insight or vipassana.
Right.
But I learned some basic vipassana meditation and mindfulness, and it really changed my mind. I had one of those, as the Zen people call it, sudden awakening, gradual cultivation. I had a very first time massive insight into the nature of my mind and the nature of my experience. It really changed the way I saw myself in the world ever since that. I mean, I had a really huge Dharma transmission. And, so I was 19 years old. That was, almost 30 years ago.
Wow. That's crazy. That's awesome, man. And so how did you end up where you're at now? Apparently it did have a lasting effect considering that, you do what you do now. With the Secular Dharma Foundation and, with, your podcast, Dave Smith Dharma, and the Buddhist Recovery podcast.
Yeah.
They've all, like I said, they've all been really helpful to me in my recovery. I'm a recovering, heroin addict, about 6 years clean. Well, no, I was a heroin addict for about 6 years. Went into treatment in 2018, was clean for 2 years, relapsed not that long ago, back on the path, bumps in the road, man.
Yeah.
But the Dharma has been so influential to me and so helpful to me to just as you said, seeing myself in a completely different way. And I think it comes from that insight meditation that we do and the Vipassana style. I've actually been trying to get into a Goenka retreat, which has been made incredibly more difficult lately.
Yeah, no, I actually would be interested in sitting a Goenka retreat just for the experience, but it's fucking hardcore, man. That's old school Vipassana. And they don't have teachers, so you have to watch videos of Goenka teaching on the VCR at night.
That's amazing.
Which is kind of cool. It's so super cult, but it's I respect that. I think if you want to get a sense of where all this stuff came from, I think going to sit a Goenka retreat is, people ask me about that. I always support that. I think that's a great idea.
Right. Yeah. I like I said, that's the way I've been leaning because I kind of lean towards some more hardcore stuff. I don't know. Maybe it's just my old school punk rocker background. I'm like, yeah, I want to do the hardcore.
Yeah. You'll soften up eventually. It'll happen to all of us.
I'm still waiting for it. It's actually happened quite a bit already.
I'm going to fucking sit here until I figure it out, Yeah. That's what the Buddha did though. So there's that kind of modulation, I think, an effort where we try too hard And then we kind of give up, and then we try too hard, and then we give up, and then we try to find this sweeter middle where it's like, we find that our effort is supportive and our effort is sustainable. And so, you have to go through your own process and what's the right effort for me and what's the right effort for you and what's the right effort for the next guy is very different. It's not like I can just say, here's the appropriate amount of effort. We're all wired so differently and so uniquely that the only way you really get a sense of that is just grinding it out, Yeah.
Yeah. You just kind of got to sit with it and figure it out.
Yeah, that's right. Hours clocked.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder if there's some sort of magic number of hours.
Well, they say that the cognitive scientists say 10,000 hours makes you a professional of anything.
Oh, yeah.
Like whether you play pool for 10,000 hours or you build houses for 10,000 hours or meditate, 10,000 hours puts you in the, I don't know where they get them. I'm sure somebody has a reason why that's true. But I remember at one point, I kind of was keeping track of that, probably around maybe 2016 or 2014. I was like, I think I've hit the 10,000 hour mark sitting.
There's no way I don't have 10,000 hours at this point.
Yeah. I was like, I don't feel like a professional though. I don't feel like an expert, but
I wonder if anybody ever really feels like an expert though. I'm sure like even the best experts.
Well, as soon as they do, then obviously it's proof that they're not. So
Right. Well, what I've experienced, especially with like the Dharma and, like I said, I'm going through facilitator training at Wild Heart, which you actually used to be a part of when it was Against the Stream.
Totally.
Yeah. What I found is that like, I completely forgot what I was going to say. That's what I found. I found that I was going to say something and it completely slipped my mind.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So, you were with Against the Stream. What happened, man? Like, I've always been curious. I know like there's.
Yeah. Again, I got lucky. I mean, I also too, I'm like, everybody wants to be a Dharma teacher nowadays or a mindfulness teacher, which I have mixed feelings about, but I never really, in my trajectory of things, I never really saw myself becoming a Dharma teacher. I never really coveted the role. I never really had this like people kind of put it on a pedestal. I mostly got involved with Against the Stream because I had been, I'd gotten sober when I was 20, I got sober when I was 28. Now you have to remember here, like I started sitting retreats when I was 19. I didn't get sober till I was 28. So I couldn't commit. I was in bands and I played in punk rock and I toured and played in ska punk bands and I would drink and party and sell drugs and all that. And then every summer I'd go to IMS and sit a 10-day Vipassana retreat. So I kind of had this double life. I knew in the end, I always knew in my heart of hearts that the Dharma would win out. But I was 23, you know what I mean? I was like, I'm not fucking done dancing with Mara yet. You know what I mean? I'm gonna crack the code on I'm gonna get craving and addiction to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna get it to work for me. I'm gonna fucking chain Mara up in the basement and fucking, you know what I mean? That level of delusion. So then when I got sober in 2003, I lived in Massachusetts for 5 years, but I moved to Nashville in 2006, which is kind of what the beginning of the whole Wild Heart thing, actually. So it's kind of a beginning to a story that encompasses many things. And I was, I'd gotten divorced. My wife had left me. It was like I moved to Nashville and my fucking life turned into a Merle Haggard song. Oh. My dog died and my girl left. And it was just like fucking, I could not appreciate the irony. But, I started working at Cumberland Heights. I started working in drug and alcohol addiction programs with teenagers. And for whatever reason, I really liked it. And for even a better thing, I was really good at it. I was just I had good counseling skills. I have no idea why. Probably because I was a fucking 34-year-old teenager, but I was really good at it. And then I started teaching mindfulness and I was doing these like spirituality groups because the kids on Sunday in the treatment center, there was a church service, but because it was a professional medical treatment center, they couldn't force the kids to go to church. Right. So the kids who didn't want to go to church would have to stay back and do spirituality group. And nobody wanted to do spirituality group. So I would do it. And I would talk about Buddhism. I talk about whatever I wanted. Nobody cared. And it started to kind of land. So, around that time, I went to a Buddhist, there was only one of them, the Buddhist Recovery Network, who's still around today. They had a conference at Against the Stream in Los Angeles, and I went out there and met Noah for the first time. And he told me about this facilitator training, which, and I didn't really want to be a Dharma teacher. I just wanted to do the facilitator training because I wanted to learn how to better teach mindfulness practices to the teenagers. Right. I wanted to get some meditation teacher training. I was really interested in trying to become a good mindfulness instructor, even more in a secular sense. I was really going in that direction. And because I knew Noah and I liked Noah and I'd read Dharma Punks and I was a punk rocker, it just made a lot of sense to do it with him and I could get into the program.
Right.
So, I did that. And then so I started a relationship with Noah that lasted for, oh God, I don't even know, maybe 7 years. And then, I did facilitator training. And then I started a group in Nashville because Noah, which I didn't even want to do, but Noah kind of made me do it. He's like, well, you're doing a facilitator training. Part of the training is you have to start a sitting group. So I started a sitting group in Nashville and it just kind of caught on. It was like for the first year, it was like 2 or 3 people. And then we did a recovery group and that brought more people in. And before we knew it, we had a full room. We had to move, we opened a center because there was just all this interest of the people. Nashville was changing. It was growing. And before I knew it, I had a thriving meditation center in Nashville. Noah allowed me to use the Against the Stream name, which I think was helpful. And then I did facilitator 1 and then he offered a facilitator 2. So I went ahead and did that. And then there was a teacher training program that he was doing and I got invited to apply for that and I got in that and I was just in it, man. I was just in the Dharma. I was teaching secular mindfulness, for lack of a better word. I was teaching in prisons and jails in Nashville. I was working for the Davidson County Sheriff's Department teaching mindfulness. I was teaching the cognitive behavioral therapy, which was the intervention they were doing in the prisons. I was the mindfulness instructor for that program. And I was just on fucking fire for the Dharma. And I was just, everything I did was just working out. So, I did that. And then I got tired of living in Nashville. I kind of hit a glass ceiling. And I was just like, I just kind of was lonely and bored and I hadn't really successfully been able to meet, I didn't have any not financial success, any romantic success. Right. And I was just kind of tired of living in Nashville. And I'm one of those people, I've moved a lot. I'm always willing to pack it up and move. And so I left Nashville. I sold my house. I had made some money. I had like, 80 grand or 100 grand or something, which was huge for me. Yeah. And I drove out of Nashville really with no idea where I was going to go. And I ended up in LA, very reluctantly. And, Noah and my wife Shannon now, who were working together at refuge recovery treatment centers, they kind of talked me into, staying there. And I taught it Against the Stream there and refuge recovery there. And then through a series of events, I kind of got too close to Noah. He was not just my teacher at this point, but he was my friend. And then I think what really damaged the relationship is I worked for him and he became my employer. Yeah. And it was just like, they say dual relationships aren't good, but it was like a triple, quadruple relationship. And then, I started to see he got divorced and he kind of had a similar experience that I had. He lost his marriage and stuff. And, he just kind of started behaving in ways that I didn't think were in line with really Dharma work or really Sila. And I ended up resigning from Against the Stream because we had moved out here and we kind of didn't tell anybody and we were exercising some privacy and that wasn't really liked so much. And so it just kind of got hot and kind of just got tense and he just was mad and it was just kind of this really like difficult situation. And I had already graduated from teacher training. So I just resigned from Against the Stream and said, I just don't want any part of this. Right. And then of course, 2 years later, we all know what happened. So, again, maybe I was lucky or clairvoyant or something. I could see the writing on the wall. And then I left and I've been gone ever since. And now it's gone. So very sad, very, very sad, fucking horrible thing, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah. But it is. I remember watching all that play out and was just like,
It was such, because, Against the Stream was really when in the heyday of Against the Stream, which I'm lucky because I really, I was in the mix during the best years of Against the Stream. I was in teacher training. I was assisting retreats. I was there for the best part of it. And, it was great and it had so much potential and it just went down so fast and so hard, that it was weird to watch from my back porch in Colorado, also having been out of it for 2 years.
Right.
I didn't have I already kind of gone through my emotional, sadness and my sense of loss and all of the mixed feelings I had about what happened and the ways I felt guilty or the ways that I felt angry. Right. I kind of went through all that stuff. And then, so by the time it all kind of crumbled, I had a more objective view on it. It was just kind of like, it's like watching the fucking Titanic sink, man. It was just like, how the fuck did this happen?
Yeah, for sure, man. So at about that point, is that when you started really working on putting together the Secular Dharma Foundation or did that come later or?
It kind of came, I would say that started a long time ago because, and I of course credit my, he's not really my teacher. He's really kind of a friend. And he's somebody that I look up to, Stephen Batchelor, who is kind of the OG secular Buddhist guy. But I had this long struggle, and it happened when I was in Nashville, where like, sometimes I wanted to be very clinical. I wanted to be like a secular mindfulness, non-Buddhist, like MBSR, like really secular mindfulness person. And I didn't want to fuck with the Dharma and all the baggage of Buddhism. But then I would switch over and I'd be like, I want to be a Dharma teacher. I want to teach hardcore Buddhism. I want to teach early Buddhism. This secular mindfulness shit is light and wimpy. And I would modulate between those extremes all the time. Right. Yeah. And I never actually, still to this day, I really haven't landed in one side of it. And, so it's been an ongoing struggle actually in my mind, in my experience about, and I do both, and I've always done both. I mean, I have a substance abuse curriculum called Mindfulness East that I've developed, but I also have a year-long Dharma intensive program that I teach. I do both. Right. I think both are valuable, but in a perfect world, and what the Secular Dharma Foundation really mission is to integrate these two worlds, is to bring the secular world of the science of emotions, evolutionary psychology, evolutionary biology, therapeutic modalities, all of the great, awesome fucking stuff that we have, and marry it, for lack of a better word, or integrate it into a contemplative practice. So it's not one or the other, it's both and. So it's not, and so that's where I've landed. It's like, do I either want to be a Dharma teacher, or do I either want to be a secular mindfulness teacher?
Right.
I'm both, both a mindfulness, secular mindfulness teacher and a Dharma teacher. And it took me a long time. I have a lot of black and white thinking, as many of us do. And, I've been able to kind of see the value of both and bring both of them together. So it's a both and rather than an either or. So the Secular Dharma Foundation really, integrates, early Buddhism and science of psychology, and really brings all of this stuff to the forefront to try to say, well, we would be foolish to leave any of this stuff by the wayside. And I actually believe that that's more in line with the core message of the Buddha in the first place. Leave no stone unturned. Right. So I feel, so secular Dharma, for me, secular, really the word just means non-monastic. Yeah. I'm a secular person living in a secular world, as are you and many of the people out there. So it's not an anti-monastic. It's not anti anything. It's just saying it's a non-monastic. It's a non-religious. It puts science ahead of esoteric metaphysics. So that's kind of really where most of my, interest is at the moment. And I suspect won't change for any time, in the future. But who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, that's kind of what drew me to it, was the secular aspect of it more than anything. I started meditating first when I was in jail in like 2014. I found a book by Bo Lozoff called Free on the Inside, and I was like, okay, cool. And it gave some
great book.
Yeah, basic meditation instruction. Yeah, man, it helped me get through a year in jail that I obviously probably would not have fared as well through had I not found meditation. Yeah. So
a lot of people have that experience. And I think that's one of the things about the secular world that's so good, is that when you remove the Buddhism, you can get these Dharma teachings, in places where they probably wouldn't be allowed or available.
Right. Yeah. I hesitate to even tell people that I'm a Buddhist. I just, I'm a Dharma practitioner. That's
but then you have to describe that, and you always end up back in Buddhism. It's like you just have to get used to the fact that it's going to be an annoying thing you're going to have to deal with for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I'm slowly getting used to that. I remembered what I was going to say. I was like, the more that I learn and the more that I progress through, just learning the Dharma and really like learning about myself, the more I get this, and I'm sure you've had this too, man, imposter syndrome, right?
I never had that.
You never got that?
No, I don't understand that. I understand it. I understand it, how it works, but I've never had that experience of like, and I feel lucky that I haven't, because I've heard many talks on it, and it's like I've always felt like, and maybe being a musician and standing on stages in front of 20,000 people help with that. Right. But I think part of it is largely as I feel pretty embodied, and I feel like I teach what I know, and I know what I teach, and I'm not trying to trick anybody, and I'm not trying to phone it in or not trying to fake it. I've always been pretty authentic. I really wouldn't even know how to not do that. Yeah. And the other side of it, if I don't really, again, I don't covet the role. Like, I'm a Dharma teacher. Like, I don't think I'm any better or any more special than somebody who teaches fucking algebra at the local high school.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I'm just a teacher of this ancient thing, which I, of course, think is profound and meaningful and one of the greatest things I've ever encountered. But still, it's just like, this is the material that I'm interested. This is the material that I teach. I don't really, I think when the imposter syndrome, one of the things that creates that dynamic is when you have a high praise, or you think that the Dharma teacher seat is some like high pedestal achievement. And I just don't think that it is. Right. So, I mean, I guess maybe I've been lucky. I feel like I've been lucky because I've heard a lot of people talk about imposter syndrome. I'm like, I don't even fucking feel that, man.
Yeah. I mean, I get it with other stuff too. So I'm sure it's some sort of deep psychological thing with me.
Yeah. It's just like I'm dismissive enough. I don't give a fuck what other people think about me anyway. You know what I mean?
which is a good thing, man.
You know, it has its downsides, but mostly it's pretty helpful.
Yeah. I mean, generally it will benefit you more than hurt you, in my experience.
Yeah, I think so.
There's even one of Don Miguel Ruiz's 4 agreements, right? It's none of my business what other people think about me.
Yeah, that's a nice pithy statement, but it's a little bit hard to put into practice. But I do like it. Yeah,
it is hard to put into practice, but if you can get there, right?
yeah, totally.
So you said you were kind of doing secular mindfulness in jails and prisons. Huh? How long did you do that for?
Oh God, maybe 5 years at least. Anyway, and I don't even know that I was teaching secular mindfulness. I mean, I was teaching. You know, this is the cool thing about my relationship with the Davidson County Sheriff's Department is there was a clinician, a woman who I always try to quote because she was a badass. Her name was Regina DeRiggi. She was the clinical director of all of the programs in the jails. She was like married to this, like, she was married to like a cop and she lived in Tennessee. She was from Utah. She used to be a corrections officer. She was like a right wing, like total prison lady.
Right.
But she really cared about the people in the jail and she really wanted to help people. And she's a hardcore Christian. And I remember talking to her because I was doing mindfulness, doing all these basic mindfulness MBSR shit, body scans, breath awareness, sensory clarity. And it wasn't working. People were fucking agitated and restless. And after a couple of weeks, I was like, I don't know if this is going to fly. She's like, well, what do you think the problem is? I said, you know what? I said, I got to be honest with you. I said, the problem is, these people need to learn some heart practices. They need to learn some Buddhist meditation. I said, this kind of surface attention training shit's not going to fly here.
Right. Yeah. And
I said, I really need to talk about some Buddhist ideas and some Buddhist meditation and some heart stuff. And I said, I just want to talk to you about that. Cause I said, if I can't do that, I said, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And she looked at me. She said, Dave, these people are in jail. She says, nobody gives a fuck what you're doing there. She's like, you do whatever you think you need to do to help these people. I was like, damn.
Bet.
So the next day I went in there and the next week I went in there and I hit him with the loving kindness. I hit him with the metta. This is what metta is. This is how it works. We're going to do it. Fucking 10 minutes in, and it was a women's jail. 30 people in the room. Half of them are crying, like totally cathartic, like massive release. Just the liberation of metta, just fucking, and that was what really, really lit me on fire for the work. Yeah. Cause I was like, yeah. Then I was like, fuck mindfulness. You know what I mean? Yeah. I was like, it's all about the heart. It's all about the heart. And then I would go in and then we would do this. Then I created a 8-module program. I forget what it was even called. It was called like Mindfulness for Addiction Treatment or some bullshit name like that. But it was like, it was all these modules. I had a module on loving kindness, one on compassion, one on forgiveness. And I also had one on mindfulness. I had one on the Four Noble Truths. So I started making curriculum because Regina didn't care. She's like, so then the women could do my little short cognitive behavioral therapy mindfulness. And then there was another group I offered that they could go into because they were in jail. So they couldn't go anywhere, but they were encouraged to participate in these programs. So it wasn't mandated. They could choose to do it or not do it, which is way better. So then I would do these 8-week series where I would take them through these 8 modules that kind of followed the Four Noble Truths, but kind of followed emotional intelligence. It was just shit that I was making up that was working.
Right.
And people were having these fucking epic experiences.
That's awesome, man. Yeah.
And it just really, and that's when I was like, that's when I think the birthplace of the Secular Dharma was like, if I use some Four Noble Truths and some emotional intelligence and a little bit of MBSR, I just started stealing and robbing from the best shit out there. Right. And that's what I think really formed my ideas around, like, don't be dogmatic. I really was starting to realize, don't be dogmatic and be more flexible in your approach. And also too, it was like, my interest wasn't being a mindfulness teacher or a Dharma teacher. My interest was trying to help the people in the room. And I was willing to do, sometimes we would talk about the 12 steps, right? We would do a lot of different things. So I was able to really get a kind of, for lack of a better word, I started to understand the Dharma through the lens of a kind of, not necessarily a Dharma transmission, but more of a therapeutic transmission of, ultimately the question will be, well, what actually works?
Right. Because
I have this great test population. I have these women and these men who are in jail for drug and alcohol and crimes. And basically these people are suffering, and 90% of them probably were traumatized. Yeah. So the question would be like, well, what interventions, what kind of practices, what kind of ideas are going to work to help these folks? And so that became my whole posture. And then it allowed me to think outside of the box. So I think I was really fortunate that I got a chance to do that, because it allowed me to approach Dharma through the lens of sort of healing rather than through the lens of this kind of, a Buddhist teacher where you're like trying to just convey concepts and ideas. Yeah. I'm not really interested in teaching concepts and ideas as much as I am interested in how those concepts and ideas can evoke a kind of personal transformation that actually has meaningful and long-lasting consequences, which is, not that easy to do.
No. I mean, it sounds like you were interested in what works, like what produces results with these people. And
that's right. And I learned that from Goldstein used to say that. Joseph Goldstein used to always say, what works, what's skillful? People say, well, what's skillful? What's unskillful? People want some sort of list. And it's like, well, what is skillful is whatever works to liberate the mind. And what every person who practices has a different set of tools and skills for how they liberate their minds. There's no standard list that I can say, you have to do the work, and that's where it boils down to, is that you have to figure that out for yourself.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I tell people all the time, like, like a dedicated practice is going to do a lot more benefit for you than harm. And if you can find even just like, 20 minutes a day, 20 minutes, like everybody scrolls their phone for well over 20 minutes a day. Like you don't have
2 hours a day.
Yeah. You don't have 20 minutes to sit in silence by yourself and really kick it around in your head and figure yourself out, Yeah. It just seems counterintuitive to me if you're trying to, work through trauma or heal or, work through any kind of addiction issues. It's like, yeah, maybe you want to try to get to the root of that. Maybe figure out what's going on with that. I don't know.
Well, there's a great benefit. If you can't sit quietly by yourself as a skill, your life is just going to be much harder.
Yeah.
If you can't even do that.
Yeah.
That was, and I always say, that's a skill. People say, well, it's hard. I'm like, yeah, you need to learn how to do that. You can't even be alone with yourself in your own mind for 20 minutes, man. Right. If you can't even do that, what happens when you walk out and have to deal with the world and politics and society and money and all this shit? Like, you can't even just be you.
Right. Yeah. What was that, Blaise Pascal quote? All of man's problems stem from his inability to sit quietly in a room by himself.
Pretty much. I mean, and ain't that the truth, It's like all human misery stems from the fact that we can't sit quietly in a room by ourselves. Yeah, exactly. And ain't that the fucking truth?
Yeah, for sure. I know once I was able to actually slow down and do the thing, like my life started changing almost immediately. I mean, and maybe not in any like real physical, tangible sense, but in here, in me, like my view of the world started changing, and then that facilitated change. The change within facilitated change without. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, one of the big buy-ins, I think that's really hard for people to wrap their head around who have a Western education or a Western worldview. I don't even think I can say Western anymore, but you know what I mean, is that, really from the view of early Buddhist psychology, you make the world with your mind. Mm-hmm. The idea that there's the world, that which is really out there.
Right.
Early Buddhist psychology, that's an illusion. you construct that, you know, in the world of the five aggregates. So your feelings and your perceptions and your intentions, and through consciousness and through conditioning and through memory and through thinking and through analysis, you know, the human mind makes the world that you think that you live in. So if you change your mind, you change the world. And I have nothing but boatloads of evidence to suggest that's true, because I experienced the world way differently than I used to. And I don't think the world's changed. The way I experienced in the world has improved vastly over the last 30 years and continues to improve. I experience a world that's more open, that's more spacious, that's more kind, that's more benevolent, that's more generous, that's more willing to do the hard work. I don't think the world has changed at all.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much the same.
Maybe it's gotten worse. I don't know. But but I think that people have a hard time believing what I just said. They're like, yeah, no, there's a out there. It's like, really?
Are you sure?
Sit down and look. You know, the Buddha would say, come and see for yourself. You are largely your manufacturing. Your experience, is that word experience, is your mind is manufacturing the experience and then experiencing the experience that just manufactured. Which is fucking kind of psychedelic.
So yeah, it's like a mental shell game.
It really is.
That's crazy, man. Like I said, man, I try to get as many people that are at least have a mild interest. I'm like, yeah, you know, because I help facilitate a Buddhist recovery group here. It actually started as refuge recovery, one of the branches of that, and then kind of, you know, when everything happened, it kind of broke off and turned into something else. And
you didn't go the recovery Dharma route; you just kept the Buddhist recovery.
You know, I've contemplated starting some recovery Dharma meetings here, but a friend of mine had already, you know, started this the refuge thing, and then it, like I said, kind of transformed into something else. And so I've just been helping with that. You know,
I think that's really skillful. I think that, you know, trying to make a template for what Buddhist recovery is, and like what Noah tried to do, take refuge recovery and spread it far and wide, turned out to be a bad experiment. You know, and the thing, people don't realize this. People have been having Buddhist recovery meetings since the early 70s. Like if you lived in Chicago and went to the local Zen center, chances are they had a Buddhist recovery meeting. Right. You know, and so this has been going on for a long time. So I think it's actually, and I help other communities do this. Just have your meeting. Do it the way you fucking want to do it. Don't try to download, you know, because I think he tried to replicate AA too much. We're trying to create a format and a structure. It's like, I think, you know, Buddhist recovery does much better when people just do what they want to do. Like you got your group of people, you do a meditation, you do a talk, maybe you read some. You see, I think it was much better when it was that way. When you try to make a program and then try to get a bunch of addicts to buy into like, here's how you do it.
Right.
I think it was a failed experiment.
That only makes sense because as individuals, you know, that what everyone needs is going to be individual as well. You know, like
that's right. It's
not one set thing isn't going, there's no cookie cutter approach to the Dharma or to recovery, especially. There's no one thing that's going to be like, well, this works for everybody across the board. Like, no, it's just not that way, unfortunately.
No, it'd be nice.
I wish it was that way. Yeah. It would really simplify this shit a lot. It would help everyone that's involved in that Buddhist recovery world quite a bit, but unfortunately it just ain't that fucking way, right?
And then if you step back a little bit, and people ask me this all the time, because we actually have been running a Buddhist recovery subscription-based program, which has been done pretty well. But the question a lot of times is like, why even do Buddhist recovery? Why not just have a Dharma group and let everybody go? Like, so the question is Buddhist, what's the difference between Buddhist recovery and regular Buddhism? Right. Nothing.
Yeah.
The Dharma in and of itself could be seen and utilized as a recovery program. So trying to lump the two together sometimes I think is kind of just a waste.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's just confusing. You're like, well, what is Buddhism? How is Buddhism and Buddhist recovery different? It's like, I don't teach it any differently. I teach the same shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but if you really look at it, like almost the whole of the Dharma is just about addiction, really. You know, like the Four Noble Truths is like, hey, you're doing these things and if you keep doing them, you're going to suffer. Like, okay. Yeah. I mean, that's it.
I think that's right. I mean, Goldstein said that to me. It made the hair on the back of my neck stand up when I was 6 months sober. I sat the 3-month retreat at IMS, which was, I don't recommend it. You do.
Brutal, dude. I don't even know how
I just did it. But I've been sitting retreat for 10 years. I thought, what's the big deal? I'll go sit for 3 months. I'll just bang out this whole addiction thing. I really thought I was going to go in and just fix myself. 3 months, right? 3 months meditation retreat. I'm not going to have any problems. And I asked Goldstein, I said, did the Buddha ever say anything about addiction? And he kind of had back and forth a few things. And then he actually paused and said, the whole of the Dharma. And really, it's the whole of the Dharma is about liberating ourselves from addiction. And you could easily say, without a doubt, and I've verified this with a few Buddhist scholars, the entire teachings that are known as the second noble truth, the teachings around craving and tanha and clinging and grasping and the 12 links of dependent origination and all of the lists that fit in that second truth, you could easily translate tanha as addiction. And I actually prefer to do it that way because I think it encapsulates the addiction process. As the Buddha is very keen on elaborating how things work processually, almost exhaustively, the 12 links of this, how, it's like the 12 links of dependent origination is a model for how the mind becomes addicted.
Yeah.
A very sophisticated, very practical model that you can actually sit down and observe arise in real time and go, holy fuck, this is how. And also the thing about it that I like so much is it's not our fault. The Buddha does not do any moralistic finger waving at us of that. There's no thou shalt not in Dharma. Yeah. The Buddha is just trying to say, here's how your system is built. This thing is, this mind has a design. That's, if we look at secularly, we look at evolutionary psychology. If we look at this great book that was written by Robert Wright, Why Buddhism is True, he unpacks this exhaustively, is that you are born into a system, a DNA system, a human system that's got millions of years of momentum. And then you just get born into this machine and this equipment that is pre-programmed with its own versions of 1 and 0s. And it's not your fault how the system behaves. Yeah. Like Tejaniya says, the mind doesn't belong to you, but it's your job to take care of it. Yeah. And then Dharma practice takes on this rich meaning of okay, here, this is a relationship. It's all a relationship. And ideally, it's a beautiful relationship. And so, that's what we're doing. We're just, we're not getting rid of anything or overcoming anything, or there's no delete button.
Yeah, for sure.
It'd be nice if there was, but there's no delete button.
Right. We might be able to defragment and maybe overwrite some files, but ultimately just got faulty programming. As human beings, we've just got faulty programming.
And it worked 5.5 million years ago when we were on the Serengeti Plain hunters. Oh, yeah. In the hunter and gatherer community, our programming worked just fine.
For sure. But we're not designed for the vicissitudes of modern society, I don't think.
Yeah, the programming didn't factor in things like social media. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's not that we haven't, the software is not catching up. The world is, especially if you look at, the last 150 years, which is known as the Industrial Revolution, technology and industry have happened at a rate far more superior and far more quickly than the rate of which natural selection will never be able to catch up.
Oh, yeah, no.
We're never going to be able to catch up. So the best thing you can do is to kind of try to do this Dharma thing of and it's hard work. And, and it's, they're understanding these concepts is perfectly helpful and being able to apply them. But it's, people also too have a very misinformed idea about what this practice is and what this practice means. And, as a teacher of this practice, that's what makes my job most frustrating.
Yeah, I can imagine so.
I love new people who, when people come in, that people are like, oh, I don't know anything about Buddhism. I never really meditated. Can I join your program? I'm like, dude, you're going to be way ahead of everybody else because you don't have 20 years of Buddhism to unlearn.
Right. Yeah. You don't have all that other stuff.
You got beginner's luck is definitely a thing in Dharma practice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, fortunately, I'm pretty new to actually other than, like I said, I've been meditating since 2014. Didn't really get involved with learning anything about the Dharma per se until the, past few years. It was just kind of all right, I'm meditating to, just meditate because I can immediately see the benefits that it was having without knowing, what it was really rooted in, without knowing anything about the Brahma Viharas or anything like that. I was just doing, your basic, like we were talking about earlier, mindfulness of breath, mindfulness of body, and that that sustained me for a long time. And then I was like, all right, maybe I want to dig a little deeper into this. Maybe I want to go a little deeper into this. And I think I kind of had that fire for it. I think I still do. I really just, I'm one of those fucking Dharma nerds that just really like loves just like reading the suttas, like I'll just sit and read. And I got lost in the 12 links of dependent origination for a while.
We always do.
I went down that rabbit hole, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. And I think it's, it's conversational. It's a dialogue with this stuff. And also too, it's like, I always tell people like, it's like the Matrix, it's like, however far down the rabbit hole you want to go is fine. Like, I respect both the wide path and the deep path. Like, there's people out there that I know who are like, surgeons or doctors or regular folk, secular people who basically are well adjusted and they do okay in the world. And they do maybe some mindfulness of breathing every day for 20 minutes and it helps them. And that's it.
Right.
That's great. So there is the wide path and there is the deep path and then there's the kind of somewhere in the middle of those two. So I think that I deeper isn't necessarily better.
Right.
And so I think people need to respect their subjective experience and say like, you don't, like deeper doesn't even mean happier necessarily.
Yeah.
So whatever, so I think about Dharma, like whatever the dosage is that you think that you need is okay. Some people are 20 minutes a day of mindfulness is your dosage. Great. Some people it's, more than that and it's retreats and it's studying the text and okay, that's your dosage. Like
right.
At this point I've gone too far down that there's no turning back at this point. So I've kind of like, that's sort of my dilemma. And in many ways, sometimes I wish I hadn't gone as deep as I have, it's like I've, had to wrestle with some of these ideas. And, I'm just sort of, for lack of a better word, a little bit addicted to this kind of stuff because I'm really am fascinated in trying to uncover what the historic Buddha actually was really saying about the human experience because it's not clear.
Yeah. It's very unclear. It's very unclear. But
very unclear.
I would venture to say that I have possibly swapped addictions, I probably have traded one for the other, traded the drugs for the Dharma. I mean, the name of my podcast is fucking Dharma Junkie.
Yeah. And it's a harm reduction strategy, like
it is.
Dharma is less harmful than heroin, it turns out.
Absolutely. And no matter what the dose.
It's funny we bring this up because there's a sutta that I've been reading, I've been obsessed with lately called the snake. And the Buddha compares practicing the Dharma to handling a poisonous snake. And so, the analogy is that, like snake venom, it can kill you. And snake venom can also be medicine to heal you. So within the contents of the snake is both healing and, destruction or death or harm, whatever. And so it depends on how you approach and how you handle and how you understand the snake, is going to determine where you end up.
Right. So
I thought it was very interesting that the Buddha, so you can use Dharma practices and Dharma ideas in ways that are very destructive, in ways that are, like if you look at the near enemies and the far enemies of the Brahma Viharas, we can see that. The way that we view the goal of Dharma can give rise to destructive things, suppression. The way that we think about equanimity, for example, as being a kind of cold indifference, it can be, the poison of the snake. We have to be constantly vigilant about questioning, like for example, I can listen to a Dharma talk I gave 2 years ago and cringe because I'm like, I don't think any of that shit anymore. And being like, I was giving people bad information, in the early 2000s. It's like, no, it's like, and I talked to Stephen Batchelor about this. He's like, that's really healthy. You should grow and you should change and you should progress as a teacher and as a practitioner, and that like you're handling, something once in a while, I haven't been killed yet, but I've been bitten by the snake quite a few fucking times, man.
Well, I mean, it only stands to reason that like the teachings that you gave, say 15 years ago are not going to be the same teachings that you're giving now because,
well, they shouldn't be and they better not be or I'm not really progressing.
Exactly. Like, you're not progressing and fuck, man, everything's impermanent. Like that Dave is not the Dave of today, like
it's true.
You're a different Dave now, I know I'm certainly a different Justin than I was 5 years ago, man. And happy to be here. Happy to be talking to you and doing the thing, man. Yeah. Like I said, I just saw such utility in meditation. And I think that's really what spurred me to want to dive a little deeper and like, okay, well, let me, figure out what this is. And like, really start looking at things from like a Dharma context. And so I started working with Mikey one-on-one at first. And then they offered, like a Buddhist study series. And I was like, okay, I'll get on board with that. And then that went into, like a Living the Dharma series, which just wrapped up, a few months ago. And then, we're starting the, meditation facilitator training in January. So looking forward to it. It'd be fun.
Yeah, I'm super, Andrew Chapman, who kind of took over for me at Against the Stream and morphed it into Wild Heart very skillfully, I must say, is one of those people who's like, he's really kind of my only real true student, I could say, somebody that I've taught, that I've worked with over the years, who actually went on to be a teacher and facilitator and so forth. And I love to always say, like, he just continues to make me look good. Because he's such a righteous dude. He's so fucking intelligent.
Andrew's
he's
awesome.
done, even the way he left the trail of breadcrumbs through the way you just described these programs you went with. It's like, he does such good work and he makes it look so easy. And I'm always like, when people talk about him and he's got his podcast, he's done really, really well. And he went on to be a therapist and a clinician. He went the clinical therapeutic route, which I think was a good choice for him. But I always like to say, like, he continues to make me look good. He's like my best fucking advertisement.
Right. Yeah. No, Andrew's awesome, man. I love Andrew. Mikey's super fucking great too. I love both of those guys.
Yeah, totally.
They're passionate about what they do. They're passionate about the teachings, and that really comes through, and
also too, Andrew, like me a little bit, I think did a really good job of not coveting the role. Like he's not technically an empowered Dharma teacher, whatever the fuck that means. I mean, I'm empowered by an organization that's gone because of ethical situations. So actually, in many ways, Andrew's more qualified to teach than I am because he went through CDL and did some other things, but he doesn't covet the role. He holds it with also being in recovery helps with a degree of humility and degree of understanding. And also, he does other things. It's not his primary livelihood. So he's one of the people I think is a great model.
Right.
Of what future Dharma teachers could and probably should look like. Like he would be like people trying to be a Dharma teacher in the world today or teaching Buddhism at some level. He would be in my mind kind of almost an ideal template of like, well, do what this guy did, he's such a great embodiment of, whether he thinks about it along these lines, but for me, he's a great embodiment of what a secular Dharma, teacher could look like.
That's kind of the route I'm taking. I'm in school for psychology right now, doing clinical psychology route. I don't know that I'm going to go all the way. I definitely want to get my master's, but like the more this is looking way far into the future, obviously, but the more I look at the clinical hours involved, I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Well, I hear you. I had to make that hard choice years ago because I never went to college anyway, so I didn't even have a bachelor's degree. But at one point I was like, and Noah actually, Levine helped me with this a lot. Noah actually helped me with a lot is that, do I want to be a Dharma? Am I going to go the Dharma road? At some point, there's that kind of Dharma road or clinical road. And to some degree, I'm just too lazy to do all the paperwork and do all the clinical hours. And the main reason I didn't go the therapeutic or counseling route was because I didn't want to get myself into these they're not weird. They're actually really helpful. The clinical boundaries of like, you're the therapist I didn't want to contribute to that hierarchy, like where you can't be friends with, you can't socialize with. It's the dual relationship thing, which is why I have a mentoring program, not a counseling practice. It's like if I come to Florida, I want to be able to go out and fucking grab a burger with you and shoot the shit. Like for me, the student teacher or the mentoring relationship has to be rooted in friendliness and kind of we're friends. Maybe first and foremost. Right. And that's that metta. For me, that if that's not part of the exchange, I don't really know if I want to be in the exchange.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of the capacity that I started working with Mikey in. It was like more of a mentorship,
Yeah.
And it's been great, man. I love Mikey. It's funny. Once I started working with Mikey, we were like, we know each other. Like we were both involved in the Plug Uglies thing and, played a lot of shows together back in the day, 12 years ago or 10 years ago, like that. It's like, you look very familiar. Oh yeah, that's right. We used to play gigs together. I got
That's
it.
Right.
But yeah, what's funny to me, man? Have you noticed, and this can maybe this is going to be on topic, but off topic. I've noticed two things about old punk rockers. They either drift towards the Dharma or bluegrass.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
I did both, actually. I mean, I actually recorded a kind of bluegrass Americana record here a couple years ago.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it is funny though. It's like, what they say in Boston, like, old school punk rockers become rockabilly people. You know what I mean? Cause it's like, they just want to turn the, they trade in their Les Paul and their Marshall for a Gretsch and a Fender Twin. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or probably more like a Blues Junior. So there's that. Yeah, it's interesting that's kind of how it goes. It's just like, well, you gotta, at some point we always talk about waking up, but at some point, some of us need to wake down.
Yeah.
And kind of downshift, slow down, quell that kind of punk rock aesthetic that's fueled by too much maybe aggression or too much like urgency, and kind of just go like, yeah, maybe we should just play some bluegrass songs, or maybe we could just go sit. And I think that's a natural progression of punk rock. I don't think you can be, I'm always skeptic of meeting 50, 60-year-old people who are still super hardcore and super independent. Like, dude, you gotta fucking chill out, bro.
Hey, relax, man. Shit.
Take it down a peg. It's like, and I think that kind of youthful, anarchistic punk rock view is, it's for the young. You know what I mean? It's actually kind of a bad look when you're still doing that shit in your 40s and 50s,
for sure, man. Yeah, I actually, when I was in my 20s, I had played, metal and punk and shit for years and years. It's just what I grew up playing. And then I don't even know what happened. At some point, I was probably about 26 years old, and I just started listening to nothing but blues one day at bluegrass. And I was like, and then at the time I was playing music for a living, and that focus shifted, and I was just playing, doing a one-man blues band thing. And I was like, how did I go from playing thrash metal and grindcore and shit to playing a one-man blues band? This is odd.
I know who said it best, who I've actually come to really not like because of his behavior, but with Ryan Adams, before he was Ryan Adams, was Whiskey Town. And there's that classic song lyric that became sort of the iconic statement for Americana music, was like, and I started this damn country band because punk rock is too hard to sing. It's like, I can't fucking do this anymore, man. That's where I got to. I was like, and I was in a really successful band in Boston when I first got sober called Ragged Old Flag, which was a band that probably would have done really, really well. But I was just like, I can't fucking do this, man. It's fucking loud and yelling and intense. And I was just like, I just want to play and I ended up getting into country. I ended up, I was like, I just want to learn how to play Johnny Cash songs on the upright bass. Like, I just can't do the volume and the intensity anymore. And I just can't scream into a mic and trying to, right now at that point, I was writing these songs and these lyrics that were sort of more country. And I was like, people can't even hear what I'm saying, because you know how it is, those loud punk shows, like the vocals are always buried, and it's it's just like, I want, so I made that kind of downshift. And, I still like, but I still like loud punk rock and stuff, but I don't find myself listening to it very often.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I'll pull out of the vault occasionally, If I'm like
if I got to get up and drive to the airport at 4 a.m, I'll listen to I'll listen to the Metallica Black Album or Social D or Rancid or something, what I mean, just to keep awake. But it's not my go-to anymore, for sure.
Yeah, that's just what I was about to say. I was like, if I'm on a road trip or something, I'll definitely pick the intensity up a little bit, just to keep myself alert and awake. But
just to get 100 miles out of the day,
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, for the most part, nah, man, I'm just. No, I can't. I'm just too laid back now. I don't know. I just can't do it anymore. I love it. And I love everybody that's still listening to it. Keep listening to punk rock. Do your thing. Yeah. You'll be playing country eventually, though.
You will.
It stands to reason. How's farm life, man? I hear you did the, was it, San Francisco Dharma Collective a couple weeks ago?
I did.
And we were talking about Sila, and you were talking about, just not being perfect with maybe every factor of the path. You're doing it to the best of your capability, but there are certain things that you have to do that may not, be in line directly with the Eightfold Path, but you really don't have an option. I'd love to talk about, I'd love to unpack that a little more, for people who may find themselves in that situation.
Well, I think you have to be realistic about this stuff. I mean, for example, let's just look at the first precept around, not people usually translate it as you shouldn't take life or you shouldn't kill, but that's actually not what the precept says. It's really about causing harm. And, and so, for example, we have, out here in Colorado, we have prairie dogs that can carry plague, and they're like the cockroaches of the high desert. I haven't had to kill any personally. I think maybe my dog killed a couple, but I would kill them if I had to, because they can give, plague to my dog and kill my dog. They can be bad for my kids. We have lots of, bugs and mice, and there's lots of critters out here that I kill.
Yeah.
And so I'm a bad Buddhist, right? It's and so that's just I think a very unintelligent and really non-sophisticated way to look at the practice. So it's the Buddha, if there's one thing he definitely is largely against, is absolutions, absolute. The Buddha doesn't do thou shalt not. That's a very Judeo-Christian kind of, you're going to burn in hell if you make a mistake, which is just fucking deeply embedded in a lot of people's consciousness. So it can be hard to break that. But it's about, it's your relationship to these things and relationships to causing harm. I actually honestly don't, as a Dharma teacher, I don't believe, and I don't teach, and I certainly don't say that I really feel like I fully practiced the first precept, because I'm a meat eater.
Right.
And I know that by eating meat, I'm choosing to participate in some level of harm. And I accept that, rather than trying to justify, which is what Buddhist teachers love to do, is they try to reform the precept so that it's in line with their behavior, which is fucking ridiculous.
Right.
So, I'm more interested in saying okay, this is how I practice it. And I do practice it. And I live a very, very harmless life. So it's not, and the other thing that really gets the problem here, and I think I pointed to this, and I'll probably never stop pointing to this, because it's so important, is this, when you think about the Eightfold Path, we see this word at the beginning of every path vector, which is translated as right. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, and so on. And so the Pali word is sama, which doesn't even kind of closely mean right. Because we know right and wrong is a binary.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a pretty intense binary and a pretty unhelpful binary. So if my measuring stick is right or wrong, good or bad, either, then I'm already missing out on so much of what the Dharma is trying to teach me. The word really means complete, or really means as best as, one of the translations I've seen in the Pali English dictionary is sama is right. So right view, as best as one can. So it's as best as one can cultivate the appropriate view, as best as one can, have right intentions. So it's a kind of it's as best as one can in the particular circumstances that we find ourselves in. So we try to do our best.
Yeah.
And that's a really a lot more, I think, friendly way to look at it.
Right.
It's a lot more tolerant way to look at it. And,
it's a lot more realistic.
I think it's a lot more in line with the original message.
Yeah. It's a lot more realistic.
Well, there you go.
I mean, really, you can't, nobody's going to be perfect, and perfect is not the same for everybody. Somebody's ethics, say eating meat isn't right for them. Well, then that's not right for them. That if that fits into the framework of their life, then that's great for you. But
then the problem with this whole right thing, and of course, and I'm so kind of frustrated that the woke movement that we see in our culture now is the fact that you even use the word woke pisses me off, because it's such a Buddhist term.
Right.
But it's and that's the problem with right. It's I'm doing it perfectly, and this is the right way to do it. And then I project that and assume and believe that everybody else needs to do it that way.
Yeah.
And it's well, that's not going to fucking pan out.
Yes.
That's the most unenlightened view I've ever heard of. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm 100% in agreement with that. Yeah.
I heard this interview that James Hetfield from Metallica did. I forget where I heard it, but he was talking about how he moved from the Bay Area to Colorado. Actually, James Hetfield lives in Vail, Colorado. And they said, what has your transition to Colorado been like, and how is it different than the Bay Area? And he said the thing that was very interesting about sort of the woke side of things is he said, when I was living in California, people are very interested in trying to keep you from doing what you want to do. You can't do this, you can't do that. He said, in Colorado, people are just enjoying doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's why we came here. We came here to do what we wanted to do and to enjoy the things that we enjoy, and to have me and my wife Shannon having the spaciousness and the financial freedom to live in a way that's in line with our sense of Sila and our carbon footprint and the kind of life that we want to have for our kids. And I don't think, and then so I could say, well, everybody needs to move to Colorado and do what I'm doing. Right. That's no good. Yeah. I'm not that interested in telling you what you should or shouldn't do. I'm much more interested in doing what I'm doing. I'm happy to have a conversation with that, but I think that, the world needs more of that kind of, tolerant openness, perspective. And I think that Sila needs to be rooted a little bit in just having a more tolerance for other people's views, actions, behaviors, and stuff. So that way we can just sort of be more friendly, so this Sila Brahma Vihara, Sila, tolerance, goodness, metta, kindness, friendliness. When we start telling people they're right, that they're wrong and I'm right, and, that's never going to fucking be helpful.
What's interesting about the whole woke movement is like it has it initially began, I guess, with the guise of being a more tolerant culture, but ultimately it's just led to more intolerance. And that's super frustrating, and the marginalization does nothing for the view of us actually being connected, like that interconnection that we all, I'm sure you have felt that maybe through meditation, maybe through your days of psychedelic experience, but you've definitely had that moment where you're like, no, we're all like one consciousness. Like we are all like, it's like that, there, but by the grace of God go I,
that's right.
Me living another life right there,
And I think that if we look at the Buddha's analysis of that, he wouldn't quite say we're all one, we're all connected, but we have to understand that, people get caught in thinking that Dharma is a teaching of cause and effect, which is actually not really right. Cause and effect is too rigid of a view. It's really a teaching of interdependence. So it's not so much that we're all one, but we are interdependent. So if, like my success is definitely correlated to your success. My happiness is correlated to your happiness. So it's in my best interest, actually, to be more kind and to be more tolerant and to be more understanding. It's actually in my best interest to not go waving the moralistic finger at myself, but also not to go waving it at you.
Yeah.
So, the we're all in it together is probably the way that the Buddha would look at it. If the ship's going down,
right,
we're all going down.
Yeah. We're all on the ship.
So, there's a way in which that, and also the thing that really helped me see this way was a book written actually by the Dalai Lama, who is not somebody that I've, of course I respect and think the Dalai Lama is a great figure, but I've never really been interested in Tibetan Buddhism, or I never felt like a follower of the Dalai Lama, but he wrote a book called Beyond Religion. It's the book on secular ethics. And that's a really, really great book that kind of points to a lot of what we're talking about.
Right on. You'll have to check that out.
It's great. And also the best thing about it is if you get it on audiobook, like if you get it from Audible, the book is read by Martin Sheen.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
And I didn't realize it until about halfway through. I'm like listening to the audiobook traveling around. I'm like, I know this voice, man.
I love when that happens. Yeah. Occasionally you'll find some interesting books on tape read by some very interesting people. And you're like, oh, that's weird. Book on tape. Look how I just dated myself. Book on tape.
Hey, man. I still use that language.
Hey,
are you taping this right now?
I am. Yeah, I am. I'm taping it.
Send me a copy of the tape when it's done.
Yeah. I'll make you a hot mixtape.
Yeah, that's right.
Man, the Dharma is just, it's so deep. The thing I really love about it is like, if you really trace the lineage, like you can go like all the way back. And that's just like one of the coolest things in the world for me.
Yeah, no, it's true. Do you have any final questions or thoughts that you definitely wanted to get to that we didn't touch into?
Nah, but I got your number. I'll text you.
All right, man.
Well, hey, man, thanks, Dave. I really appreciate taking the time to talk to me today. It's been super fun. Like, you've been so influential in just my Dharma path. And I literally wouldn't be where I'm at without you, because if it wasn't for you, then Wild Heart wouldn't be there. And so it's, we're all in the boat together, man. And I appreciate
the trail of breadcrumbs is a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I absolutely appreciate everything you're doing. Do you have any retreats coming up this year that you're going to be teaching at, or?
I will. I'll post them probably in a little bit. I'm not, with COVID and stuff, I'm reluctant to say, because I don't know if any of them are actually going to happen.
Right on. Okay. Now, where can people find you at?
DaveSmithDharma.com.
Awesome.
everything I've ever done. And, if you look around my website, if you have the patience to comb through a website, there's pretty much everything is there or links to everything that's there. Dave Smith Dharma podcast. I also have on iTunes, Spotify. So my website has that on there. So if you want to follow what I'm up to or get in touch with me or even email me directly, you can do that all off my site.
Sweet. Excellent, man. Well, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day in beautiful sunny Colorado.
Thanks, man.
Hopefully you don't have to kill any prairie dogs today.
No, I don't think so. We'll see though. You never know.
Yeah, you can't ever tell. All right, man. Take it easy.
All right, brother.
Big thanks are again in order to Dave for being on the show. It was a super fun conversation, and I hope to have him on again in the future. If you would like to get in touch with him, he can be found at davesmithdharma.com. And if you want to check out his podcast, it is of the same name, Dave Smith Dharma. Be sure to check it out. It's really, really good. If you enjoyed the episode, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe on either Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast from. This has been Dharma Junkie. Thank you for listening, and namaste.